Back when I was crushing hard on my boss, I secretly changed his contact name to Hubby. The next day, my boss couldn't find his phone and borrowed my iPhone. Siri, call. His voice was warm and deep as he prompted me to say the name. I froze, then frantically shook my head. Diana? Luke Reynolds asked, looking at me, confused. Seeing me clamp my lips shut, he pushed the phone closer to my mouth and repeated, pointedly, Siri, call. On the verge of tears, I squeezed my eyes shut and yelled in desperation, Hubby. A few drinks in, and people get bold. At a dinner for the company's mid to senior level managers, the project director, his eyes bloodshot from the wine, called me out. Diana, you don't have a boyfriend. How about you just settle for me? The table went silent. Dude, you're hitting on the CEO's assistant? Someone pulled at his arm, whispering a warning. The old perv. My boss had a last-minute emergency tonight and had asked me to make an appearance on his behalf. No one expected Mr. Quinn, the director, to say something like that. I fought the urge to tell him off and instead offered a polite, smiling refusal. It's true I don't have a boyfriend. That's because I have a husband. Mr. Quinn, his pride wounded, demanded proof. I gave him a look and picked up my phone. Since my boss wasn't here, he could actually do me a favor. Siri, call Hubby. The call screen lit up, the word Hubby displayed clearly for all to see. Mr. Quinn froze. Mission accomplished. I was about to hang up. But the next second, a familiar ringtone blared from the doorway. My heart skipped a beat. I turned my head in disbelief, nearly dropping my phone. Luke Reynolds, the cool, aloof boss I'd worked with for 3 years, was standing there with an unreadable expression on his face. Everyone followed my gaze to the door, their jaws practically on the floor. The screen of the phone in Luke's hand was brightly lit. He didn't answer it, but he didn't decline it either. But that ringtone, so familiar it was practically burned into my brain, hit me like a series of thunderclaps, leaving my mind completely blank. My world was ending. Didn't Luke say he wasn't coming? He couldn't have heard me call him Hubby, right? Diana, you and Mr. Reynolds. You two are? Someone was so shocked they were stuttering. I frantically hung up, trying to come up with an excuse to explain this mess to my boss. But Luke's phone was somehow still ringing. Huh? What was happening? As everyone watched, confused, that trademark icy gaze of his shifted, and he answered the call. Someone else had called him, just a second before my call could connect. Oh, thank God. I secretly let out a breath. I heard a low and Luke's eyes swept over to me. He gestured for us to continue, then turned and walked toward the terrace. Mr. Quinn, who'd been flushed with alcohol, was now completely sober. He wiped his forehead, trembling, and didn't say another word. Everyone else slowly came back to their senses. That scared me. I really thought you were the CEO's wife, Diana. I quickly laughed it off. But for the rest of the dinner, I couldn't focus on the conversation. All I could do was replay the scene in my head, trying to figure out when exactly Luke had shown up at the door. I was pursing my lips in thought when Luke walked back in, his face cold. He sat down in the main seat and looked directly at Mr. Quinn, the sharpness in his eyes unmistakable. My heart sank. Mr. Quinn looked guilt-ridden, his face a mask of misery. Mr. Reynolds, I drank too much. I shouldn't have been so presumptuous. Luke looked at him impassively and said coldly, No, you shouldn't have. I blinked. Everyone's eyes widened and shot toward me. It was as if they were all asking, Are you and the boss together? Before I could say anything, Luke placed his phone on the table and pushed it into the center for everyone to see. One of the senior execs picked it up, and his expression immediately turned serious. On the screen was evidence that Mr. Quinn had been taking kickbacks. The color drained from Mr. Quinn's face. Before he could speak, Luke raised a hand, and someone came to escort him away. The rest of us at the table just stared at each other, as if we still hadn't processed the sudden turn of events. Only I quietly exhaled in relief. Thank goodness Luke hadn't heard me call him hubby. Luke had always hated wasting energy on personal relationships. His entire focus was on work. If he knew I'd changed his contact name, I'd be out of a job, too. Thank God, thank God. You look pretty happy, Diana. Luke's gaze settled on me, lingering. I paused, then put on a standard professional smile. You rooted out a snake in the grass, Mr. Reynolds. As your assistant, I'm genuinely happy for you. He gave me a flat look. I see. The next morning, the elevator was packed. My head was spinning. Last night's emotional roller coaster had wrecked my sleep. Even my dreams were filled with nightmares of Luke almost discovering my secret. What can I say? I'm thirsty, but I'm also a coward. I'd fought tooth and nail against countless competitors to land this offer and get in front of him. But in the end, all I dared to do was secretly change his contact name. Luke usually contacts me through texts, so the chances of him finding out were minuscule. I never imagined last night's coincidence would happen. Looks like I can't use the hubby contact as a shield anymore. But if I don't, there's no way he'll find out, right? Forcing myself to wake up, I pulled out my phone to double-check Luke's schedule for his promo photo shoot today. The colleague next to me saw me cover my mouth to yawn and teased, "What were you up to last night?" Ahem, I can't very well say I was up all night thinking about my boss, can I? I gave her a sheepish smile. Too many guys with 8-packs online. It's hard to look away. My colleague got it instantly. Same here. I've got like 7 different online husbands a day, but in real life, I've been single since birth. Speaking of online husbands, I had one secretly tucked away in my phone's contacts. Ding. The elevator arrived at another floor. My colleague and I stepped out to let people off before getting back in. But when I looked up, I was shocked to see my boss, Luke Reynolds, was the last one standing in the elevator. A jolt went through me. He didn't hear my little white lie just now, did he? Wait, why am I so nervous? Mr. Reynolds, we mumbled, steeling ourselves. My colleague whispered, the boss's private elevator isn't broken, is it? Why is he slumming it with us? I have no idea. Luke glanced at me. Get in, he said, his brows slightly furrowed. Did someone piss him off? He seemed to be in a perfectly good mood when he left the party last night. As the elevator ascended, my phone vibrated. It was a text from my colleague. Luke looks furious. I'm getting off now, you're on your own. Ding. My colleague scurried out, leaving just Luke and me in the elevator. The confined space fell silent. Just as I was about to say something to break the tension, Luke spoke, his voice cold. Diana, watching too many mindless videos at night can affect your work performance. The boss is warning me. You're right, sir. I'll switch to watching them during the day, I replied instantly. Luke paused. Only then did I realize what I just said. No, that's not what I meant, sir. The elevator doors opened. Luke gave me a cool, indifferent look, then strode out. Beach photo shoot this afternoon. You're coming with me. Huh? I stood there, momentarily stunned. Luke's promo shoots are always over in 10 minutes, so he's never asked me to come along before. Why does he want me there this time? When we arrived at the beach, it was already dusk. The moment Luke stepped out of the dressing room, my eyes widened. For as long as I'd known him, Luke always wore a suit and tie, no matter the occasion. The top button was always, without fail, done up. I'd never even seen the skin below his neck. But today, not only was he not wearing a tie, but he had also unbuttoned the very top button. His handsome collarbones were faintly visible. Is this really happening? Am I allowed to be seeing this? I blinked. His physique was truly a sight to behold. And his looks were top tier, the kind that turned heads wherever he went. He seemed a little unused to showing more skin than usual, and his brows were slightly knitted. Just as he was about to look up, I quickly averted my gaze. Better safe than sorry. He can't find out about my secret thirst for him. But then I remembered that Luke had specifically asked me to come today, and I couldn't stop my mind from racing. Could it be that Luke has feelings for me, too? Luke. The director's excited voice came from behind me. You finally took my advice. Never mind. I was overthinking it. The reason Luke was acting so out of character was because of the director's nagging. As one of Luke's longtime friends, the director had always despised his buttoned-up, ascetic style, saying he was wasting a great body. But Luke had always remained unmoved. Why didn't you answer your phone just now? The director asked, raising an eyebrow and mocking him. Don't tell me you needed to psych yourself up for half an hour just to undo one button. Luke, who was just walking past me, paused and glanced at me. Then he frowned at the director and denied it. Couldn't find my phone. Got held up. Let's shoot, Luke said, heading toward the set. Once filming started, the director was ecstatic, the camera shutter clicking furiously. The next second, he suddenly stopped. Mr. Big Shot CEO, undo one more button, the director gestured at Luke. One more? My heart leaped as I looked at Luke. To my surprise, Luke's gaze suddenly swept toward me. Our eyes met mid-air, and he froze for a second. I got the message instantly. For Luke to unbutton one in public was already a huge compromise. To ask him to reveal more in front of me, his subordinate, would definitely make him uncomfortable. So I pretended to look down, engrossed in my phone. But my ears were pricked up, listening intently. The moment Luke had a lapse in judgment and agreed to undo another, I'd be the first to look up. Seeing Luke remain motionless, the director just called his own female assistant over to unbutton it for him. Let my assistant do it. Luke spoke, his tone casual. Me? Luke refused the director's assistant but wanted me to unbutton his shirt. I was a bit stunned. Or did he think that since I'd been with him for a few years, he could tolerate my touching more than anyone else's? I still hadn't recovered by the time I was standing in front of him. I'd never stood so close to Luke before. His handsome collarbones, the smooth line of his throat, his sharp jawline. Further up, the edge of his lips hovered at the corner of my vision. I looked down, not daring to look any higher. Sure, I'd been thirsty for Luke for a long time. But when it came to actually making a move, it was impossible not to be a chicken. I carefully pinched the edge of the button, and a deep voice suddenly came from above. It's not that fragile. My hand froze, and my face turned red. I could die of embarrassment. I bit my lip and slowly undid the button. The line of his collarbone was revealed, and I couldn't help but sneak a few extra glances, my heart pounding. If only this incredible man were really my husband. I slowly lowered my hand, only to hear the director shouting from behind, undo one more. I flinched and instinctively looked up at Luke. I found him looking down at me. Luke spoke slowly, his tone unreadable. Do what the director says. Okay. Steeling myself, I raised my hand again. The next second, the defined line of his pectoral muscle came into view. Even though the sea breeze was blowing, the air around us felt strangely thick. If I undid one more, we'd be at his abs. I didn't dare look any longer. I was about to step back, but the director yelled even more excitedly, perfect. One more. What? One more? My hand froze, but my eyes couldn't help drifting downward. The wind gently rustled Luke's shirt. As it billowed, I could already glimpse the tight, well-ordered rows of his abs. Ahem. Would Luke agree to show that much? Luke. If you don't undo it, don't call me for future shoots. The director threatened. No. That can't happen. I panicked internally. He was the director Luke worked with best, he couldn't go on strike. Luke shot the director a cold look, then lowered his head, his voice deep. Go ahead. Was my dream coming true? I stared at the abs within my reach, feeling a little dazed. It's just work, just work. I frantically repeated the mantra to myself, but my wrist was suddenly grabbed by the man in front of me. "Stop shaking," he murmured. The warmth from his hand on my wrist only made my heart race faster. I just bit my lip and nodded furiously. Luke let go. But my heart was still going crazy. He took the initiative to hold my hand. But before I could get excited for more than 2 seconds, my thoughts were derailed by the button in front of me. A strand of my hair, blown by the wind, had gotten tangled around the button on his chest. He's not going to think I'm doing this on purpose, is he? In my panic, the top of my head accidentally brushed against his chest. It was firm to the touch. I flinched, and at the same moment, Luke's breath hitched. Oh God, is he mad? Just as I decided to yank the strand of hair out, he grabbed my hand again. The air above my head instantly grew hotter. Luke had lowered his head. "I'll do it." Before I could process it, his palm was already covering my hand, holding the strand of hair in place. His other hand cupped the button, and with a slight flex of his long fingers, it popped open. The instant my hair fell free, a whole lot more scenery rushed into my vision. Whoa. I swallowed hard. What is with today? Why am I getting so many bonuses all of a sudden? I was dumbfounded. It wasn't until Luke cleared his throat that I realized my other hand, at some point, had come to rest on his abs, separated only by a thin layer of fabric. The feeling of chiseled blocks, just like a bar of chocolate. Absolutely unreal. Too bad I couldn't touch them for long. I quickly turned and walked away. I might have been imagining it, but I could have sworn I saw Luke's Adam's apple bob. I retreated behind the camera, too embarrassed to look at Luke directly, but my eyes kept involuntarily glancing his way. In the warm, golden light of the setting sun, he stood there with an easy confidence. Sharp brows, deep-set eyes, a high-bridged nose. One look at him was enough to make my heart flutter for a long, long time. After the shoot, Luke went to the dressing room to change. A moment later, he called me in. As soon as I walked in, I saw Luke searching for his phone on the sofa. He was bent over, and the spot where the button had popped off revealed a patch of his chest, with even a hint of his abs visible. Ahem. I really picked the right day to come to work. Give me a call, Luke said, standing up, his expression normal. I froze. Call him from my phone? His contact name on my phone is Hubby. Calling him in front of him would be like jumping into a pit of fire. No. Absolutely not. Diana? Luke asked, looking at me, confused. When he didn't get the expected response, Luke narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you nervous, Diana? He asked slowly, a hint of suspicion in his gaze. My heart tightened. Luke's intuition was always sharp. He was getting suspicious. And no, my phone's dead. I need to charge it. I clutched my phone tightly and started to turn away. Is that so? Luke quickly closed the distance between us, his voice low. Siri. Yes? My iPhone immediately responded. I jumped. Before I could react, Luke's expression turned fascinatingly complex. He looked at me, his gaze lingering, and spoke again in that warm voice. Siri, call. He was prompting me to say the name. I can't say it. I'd rather die. I frantically hid my phone behind my back, biting my lip hard. Luke frowned slightly, leaning his body closer, stepping toward me. The tempting view of his chest in my line of sight grew larger. I blushed and quickly turned my head away. But the man in front of me, oblivious, continued to lean in. His arms snaked past my waist, accurately grasping the wrist I had hidden behind my back. He slowly pushed the phone to my lips and repeated, pointedly, Siri, call. His voice was so full of challenge it made me swallow hard. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. Well? He pressed, his aura overpowering, making it clear he wouldn't let me back down. I squeezed my eyes shut and yelled at him in desperation, Hubby. The hand holding my wrist suddenly tightened. A wave of heat shot up my arm. My mind went blank, and my heart was about to explode with panic. But Luke remained silent. I cautiously opened my eyes and saw him staring at me, his gaze deep and intense. "Aren't you going to explain, Diana?" he asked, his voice heavy. My heart sank. How am I supposed to explain this? Explain that I've had a crush on him for ages and changed his contact name because I was afraid he'd find out? Luke would fire his insubordinate assistant on the spot. My palms grew sweaty. The phone on the sofa kept ringing, a constant reminder of my impending doom. Luke stared at me with that unreadable expression for a long time before finally letting go of my hand and bending down to get his phone. He moved the clothes on the sofa, and there it was. I bit my lip, filled with regret. It was so easy to find. I should have just offered to help him look for it. Luke efficiently ended the call. He looked up at me, his sharp gaze feeling like it could see right into my soul. On the verge of tears, I clenched my fists and started fabricating an excuse. "Mr. Reynolds, you know truth or dare, right? This was my punishment from a game with friends last week. I have to keep it for a month, that's why I haven't changed it." "Really?" I insisted. The words had barely left my mouth when Luke's brow furrowed, and he let out a humorless little laugh. "Is that so? I'm done for." Whenever Luke gets that look, it means he absolutely does not believe a word I'm saying. What do I do? My scalp tingled as he took another step toward me, his tone icy. "Making jokes about your boss behind his back?" I flinched and instinctively denied it. "No, of course not." "No? So you just made up a story to lie to me, Diana?" He was bluffing. Luke raised an eyebrow, his dark eyes shining, as if he'd caught a kitten stealing a treat. And I was that kitten, so scared I'd almost confessed everything. I was about to argue when Luke suddenly grabbed my wrist. As if trying to shatter my last line of defense, he pulled me toward him. But I stumbled and fell right on top of him on the sofa. My palm landed on a firm surface, and one of my hands even accidentally slipped inside the deep V-neck of his shirt, brushing against his chest. The skin under my fingertips was smooth and silky. He froze, looking up at me. My heart pounded. I tried to push myself up off his chest. But the movement caused the man beneath me to let out a muffled groan. Startled, I instantly let go and collapsed back on top of him. Heat rushed to my face. Our skin was pressed together. The man who had always seemed so cold and aloof now had bright red ear tips. A faint, cool, woody scent filled my senses. For a moment, I was dazed, my eyes drifting down to his lips, which looked very kissable. It wasn't until I heard the chatter of people walking by outside the door that I snapped back to reality. Sorry, so sorry, Mr. Reynolds. I didn't do it on purpose." I immediately scrambled up, putting distance between us. "It's over. My reputation as a thirsty fangirl is permanently sealed." Luke cleared his throat, a little uncomfortable, his voice husky. He sat up and straightened his collar. My gaze fell on his shirt with the popped button. Remembering Luke was always careful with his belongings, an idea to ease the awkwardness just popped out of my mouth. "Sir, you should take off your shirt." The hand straightening his collar froze. Only then did I realize the wild thing I'd just said. My face flushed, and I quickly added that I wanted to take it to a tailor. "Okay," he replied in a low voice, and then his long fingers went to his shirt. I didn't even register it when he undid the button at his waist. Luke looked up at me, his gaze heavy. "What, Diana? You want to watch?" His taut waist and abdomen were clearly visible. I spun around and shut my eyes. Behind me, I heard the soft rustle of clothes. Soon, Luke's calm voice said, "All set." When I turned back, he handed me the shirt, now in a bag. "When the photos are ready, you review them first, then send them to me." "Yes, sir." Also, he added, giving me a cryptic look, since it was a dare, "the contact name, you can keep it for a month." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." I'll only keep it for 1 month. I promise I'll change it after a month. I pledged earnestly. The moment I said it, his expression inexplicably turned cold. What did I say? After a moment, he frowned and said, I have other plans tonight. You can head home. Yes, sir. I immediately backed out of the room. After work, I made a quick trip to the mall. But as I was leaving, I was surprised to see Luke standing outside another men's bespoke shop. Why is he here, too? Luke was dressed, as always, in a sharp suit. He stood tall and straight, his posture relaxed and steady. The thought that I had accidentally tackled this man onto a sofa just hours ago made my face burn all over again. Real life is so much more satisfying than my online husband's. Maybe I should just go for it, and try to bring this unattainable prize down from his pedestal? I was psyching myself up, but I had only taken one step when a glamorous, flamboyant beauty walked out from behind him. The moment she appeared, Luke naturally took the gift box from her hands. My feet froze, and I stopped in my tracks. So this was his other plans for the night. Luke had always disliked excessive contact with the opposite sex, let alone accompanying someone on a shopping trip. A bucket of ice water crashed over my head, instantly extinguishing the hopeful sparks from a moment ago. The woman looked at Luke and smiled. If he likes this birthday present, you can get ready to call me your sister-in-law. Sister-in-law? So she's Luke's sister, the notoriously powerful CEO? Ahem. I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Hearing her words, Luke frowned. Your male assistant doesn't have eyes for you. He only cares about work. The powerful female CEO in love with her male assistant? Is this something I should be hearing? Luke's sister shot him a look. You've been single your whole life. What would you know about the subtle push and pull of a romance? Luke's face tensed. He advised her to have a backup plan, lest she find it too hard to fire him later and make things difficult for herself. She raised an eyebrow and shot back, Your assistant is so exceptional. Are you telling me you can guarantee you'll never fall for her? I flinched, my heart starting to pound. I instinctively looked at Luke. Luke paused, then quickly spoke. I won't be like you and put myself in a difficult position. My hand went slack, and the bag almost fell to the floor. When he'd allowed me to keep his contact name as hubby for a month, I'd even started to wonder if he saw me differently. What if she likes you? Are you going to fire her? She pressed. I bit my lip, watching Luke. But Luke didn't answer. His silence said it all. Luke was always rational and decisive. When it came to his principles, he was strictly professional, never letting irrelevant emotions affect him. I clutched the bag tightly, gave Luke one last look, and quietly slipped away. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see were Luke's words. The only thing I felt grateful for now was that I had managed to fool him in the dressing room. I numbly opened my contacts. This hubby name could have stayed for a month. But not anymore. If I had to choose between confess my crush and get fired and hide my secret and keep working with him, I had to choose the latter. After a long hesitation, I raised my hand and changed Luke's contact name from hubby back to boss. At the regular meeting the next day, I deliberately avoided eye contact with Luke, but I caught a glimpse of him frowning, a look of confusion on his face. After the meeting, once Luke got up to leave, a colleague came over to check some information with me. I opened my phone, and she glanced at my still open contact screen and gasped. You have a husband? My heart leaped, and I instinctively looked toward Luke. He paused his step, turned slightly, and a flicker of light crossed his eyes. Didn't I change the name back to boss last night? Did I only do it in a dream? I quickly looked at my phone. The next second, I breathed a sigh of relief and showed the screen to my colleague. Oh, it says, boss. My eyes played a trick on me, I thought it said, hubby. Sorry, she said, laughing awkwardly. I forced myself to stay calm and smiled back. I don't even have a crush on anyone, let alone a husband. That answer should convince Luke I have no ulterior motives. But Luke just frowned, his expression turning cold. Soon, he stopped looking at me and strode out of the conference room. For the next few days, Luke was in a perpetually foul mood. He seemed unwilling to talk to me. Even when we had to interact, it was, at most, a cold It seems my answer at that meeting really displeased him. I stood there, dazed for a moment, then picked up my mug and went to the break room. As I was filling it with water, I heard a colleague exclaim, holding her phone, "My God! Mr. Reynolds is getting married." "What? No way, that's fake news." Another colleague asked. "It's 100% real. My inside sources are always right. And he's meeting his fiancée to be tomorrow." I froze, my brain struggling to process the information. Luke is getting married? How could it be so sudden? "Diana, your cup's overflowing." A colleague came over and turned off the water. "What are you thinking about?" Nothing, just reviewing my work." I dazedly returned to my desk, my gaze fixed on the closed door of the CEO's office. A man that exceptional, it would be strange if he didn't have a partner. I spent the next 2 minutes at my desk, feeling like I was sitting on pins and needles, until a message from Luke popped up. "Come in." The moment the door opened, Luke's eyes were on me. I froze and quickly looked away. "Mr. Reynolds, are you looking to book a restaurant for your date tomorrow?" I forced myself to sound composed, but I regretted the words as soon as they were out. Before walking in, I had warned myself not to get too invested in this marriage alliance, but the moment I saw him, I couldn't help but want to confirm if the news was true. A flash of surprise crossed Luke's eyes, but he quickly realized I already knew about the marriage plans. He was silent for a moment. "Yes." His gaze then fell on the pen and paper in my hand. "Why are you using a notepad?" he asked, breaking the silence of the past few days, his tone casual. In my 3 years with him, I'd long since perfected my mental note-taking and rarely used paper. I bit my lip and glanced at the notebook I was using to hide my emotions. "You taught me to be careful with important matters." He looked at me, his brows slightly furrowed. Next, Luke went through the details of the date, one by one. The restaurant, the flowers, the gift, every little thing. I tried to keep my composure, but my handwriting was uncontrollably shaky. "I've noted everything. Does your fiancé have any dietary restrictions?" I asked. His expression hardened, and then he let out a humorless laugh, his eyes devoid of warmth. "You're very thoughtful, Diana. You've even thought of that detail." I gripped my pen, the plastic digging into the web of my thumb. "She is your future wife, after all. As your assistant, it's my job." I forced my lips into a smile, the perfect, professional curve. Luke's gaze was heavy. "If there's nothing else, Mr. Reynolds, I'll go book the restaurant." I couldn't keep the smile up any longer. "Go ahead," Luke said, his words clipped. Ever since the news of Luke's marriage alliance broke, I heard talk about it everywhere I went. Even if I tried to ignore it, the topic found its way to me. To my dismay, colleagues kept asking me for details. "Diana, why did Mr. Reynolds choose MS Sterling? Are they old acquaintances? Is he getting married because he's in love, or is it family pressure?" I sighed internally and told them I didn't know. What made it even worse was that on the day of the date, Luke kept calling me into his office. Maybe because he was meeting his fiancée, he was more talkative than usual. "Diana, which of these suits do you think is more appropriate for tonight?" In the walk-in closet in his office, Luke looked at a dark and a light suit, asking for my opinion. Luke always had this ascetic vibe. The dark suit would only intensify that sense of restraint, making it easy for anyone to fall for him. I pursed my lips and gave my honest opinion. "The dark one complements your style better, sir." Luke looked at me, a slight curve appearing on his lips. "I'll take your advice." The second time. "Diana, which tie do you suggest?" He stood before me, holding 2 different ties. For some reason, I was suddenly reminded of how he looked at the beach photo shoot, his collar slightly open. Cool and reserved, yet with a hint of untamed spirit. My heart stirred. No one could dislike him like that. Honestly, I avoided his gaze. The way your collar was slightly open for the photo shoot last time, it looked really good. No, Luke frowned, rejecting it instantly. Then the dark one? I asked tentatively. Okay. The third time. Diana, Luke said, holding out his wrist. Is this cologne okay? I leaned in slightly, and he naturally extended his wrist toward me. The moment the cool, cedarwood scent hit my nose, I froze, my mind flashing back to the accident on the sofa. My face suddenly felt hot. When I didn't respond, Luke lowered his head and brought his wrist closer, curious. For a moment, he was so close it made me dizzy. When I came to my senses, I immediately took a step back. He's about to be married. I should keep my distance. Luke paused, seeming to realize how intimate the gesture had been. Seeing me retreat, he lowered his eyes and said nothing. Mr. Reynolds, I have to get back to work, I said, forcing a calm tone as an excuse to leave. Just before the door closed, I saw Luke staring at his wrist, lost in thought. After that, Luke didn't call me in again. At dusk, Luke came out of his office to leave for his date. As he passed my desk, he looked over at me. I didn't know what to say, so I just offered a polite platitude. I hope you and your fiancé have a wonderful date. His brow furrowed, and he left the office without a word, his lips pressed into a thin line. After Luke left, I sat at my desk in a daze. Suddenly, a notification popped up on my computer. Ding. My heart tightened as I looked up. It wasn't a message from Luke. It was the zip file of photos from the beach shoot. I double-clicked to open it, and my screen filled with pictures of Luke. Every single one was captivating. A high-bridged nose, strong brow bones casting faint shadows. Even when looking at the camera, he had that commanding presence, an aura that radiated a cool distance. The only thing that starkly contrasted with his usual self was his slightly open collar. I stared at the photos, lost in the moment. I had planned to secretly change my computer wallpaper to a picture of Luke once I got these. But now he was getting married. With mixed emotions, I scrolled through the photos, then froze when I got to the last one. In the picture, I was unbuttoning his shirt. Even though my head was down, you could see the faint blush on my face. With that expression, it was hard to miss the fact that I was interested in Luke. And the way Luke was looking at me was surprisingly gentle and focused, giving me a dangerous, false hope. I stared at the photo for a long time. Sending this to Luke would only make him think I had other intentions. I pressed the delete key. I clicked confirm. Then I forwarded the rest of the images to Luke. Just 30 seconds after I sent them, my phone rang. It was Luke. Mr. Reynolds, I answered quickly. Are you at the office? Luke asked, but his tone held a clear note of displeasure. Did the date not go well? Yes, I am, I replied. There's a box on my desk. Bring it to me, he said, his voice low. Wasn't that the necklace he'd had me pick out for his fiancée? I quickly grabbed the gift and rushed downstairs. Looks like he forgot the gift and she wasn't happy about it. When I arrived at the private dining room, I stood at the door, holding the box and taking a few deep breaths. For a split second, I admit I'd hoped it was a fake date. But it wasn't. The moment I stepped inside, I saw the woman sitting across from Luke. Elegant and gentle, with curly hair, red lips, and a smile in her eyes. Handsome and beautiful, they were indeed a perfect match. I lowered my eyes. Mr. Reynolds, here's what you asked for. I placed the box on the table. He responded flatly. I gave Luke's fiancée a polite nod and was about to leave. Don't be in such a hurry. She called out to me, then leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and studied me seriously. Finally, she smiled and said, You don't need to come to work tomorrow. I don't want my husband's executive assistant to be a woman. I was stunned and instinctively looked at Luke. Hearing her words, Luke frowned at his date but said nothing. My heart sank. Luke didn't object, which meant they had discussed this beforehand. Luke really had zero feelings for me. But the fact that she could decide my career with a single sentence made me want to argue back. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but they felt weak. Could I claim I had absolutely no personal feelings for Luke? No matter how I spun it, it would sound like I was lying to myself. I secretly dug my nails into my palm and looked calmly at the future Mrs. Reynolds. Understood. I'll submit my resignation letter shortly, I said, forcing my voice to sound firm and casual. The moment I finished, Luke's gaze sharpened, and his face instantly turned cold. His date laughed out loud. She looked at Luke. Looks like your assistant has zero feelings for you. She doesn't like you, Luke. I froze. What did she mean by that? His date continued to tease him with a smile. Maybe you should consider me instead, Luke. We can stick to my original offer. After we're married, you do you, and I'll do me. Not interested, Luke's face grew even colder, clearly wanting to drop the subject. His date sighed dramatically. She's not worried, but you're the one who can't keep his cool. You know what? Since you're so handsome, I'll give you a tip. If she's not into you, you can always get a little forceful, you know. Luke actually liked me? The woman glanced at my dumbfounded expression and laughed. All right, I'll stop teasing you too, she said, getting up. She looked between me and Luke like she was watching a play. Talk it out. If she doesn't want you, I don't mind adding another to my collection. The moment she left, Luke stood up, his face grim, like he'd been holding back for too long. Before I could react, he frowned, wrapped an arm around my waist, and pinned me against the table. You really don't mind at all that I'm getting married? He asked, his voice full of anger, the hand on my waist tightening. Is it because I've been too good at hiding it? As I was about to speak, Luke's phone, which was on the table, lit up. When I saw his lock screen wallpaper, my eyes flew open in shock. Wasn't that the photo of me unbuttoning his shirt at the beach? I deleted that, didn't I? And he was using it as his wallpaper? I looked at Luke, bewildered. He glanced at his phone, and his frown softened. His eyes burned as he looked at me. It's exactly what you think. You really like me? I asked nervously, looking at him. For a long time. I just wasn't sure how you felt, he said, pausing as his gaze grew even more intense. Until that night at the dinner party, when I heard you ask Siri to call me hubby. I was stunned. You heard me call you hubby back then. Realizing how intimate that sounded, I instantly clapped a hand over my mouth. He gently pulled my hand away and held it tightly. When he spoke again, his voice was low and husky, and his expression was full of displeasure. Why did you change the contact name back? I pursed my lips. Because that day, I hesitated. That day you advised your sister to fire her assistant. Luke's expression faltered, a flicker of surprise on his face. You were there? The words had barely left his mouth when he understood. When I said I wouldn't put myself in a difficult position, it was because, he looked at me, his expression resolute. If I could be sure that you liked me too, I would have walked toward you without a moment's hesitation. He picked up the small box from the table and slowly opened it. Inside wasn't the gift I had prepared for his date, but a new necklace. Diana, give me a chance. Looking at the man I had secretly crushed on for years, I suddenly let out a long, slow breath of relief. I smiled and nodded at him. Okay. After Luke's confession, I didn't agree to make things public right away. It was all too sudden. It felt unreal. I needed some time to process it all. Luke looked disappointed but agreed. His only condition was that I change his contact name back to hubby. The next day at the office, I was a little nervous. My colleagues were confused when they heard Luke's marriage alliance was off. That is, until our resident gossip expert dropped another bombshell in the break room. Big news, big news. Mr. Reynolds has a secret crush. And she works right here in our company. The news that a secret office romance was unfolding under their noses sent everyone into a frenzy. They all started chattering, trying to guess who the future CEO's wife could be. I didn't dare say a word. Clutching my cup, which was once again about to overflow, I quietly slipped away. The next day was the company's mid-year celebration party. Luke's sister came, too. Standing beside her was her male assistant. They were laughing and talking, completely unbothered by the stares of others. She even smugly flashed a diamond ring at Luke. Luke took one look and was clearly provoked. His brows furrowed deeply. As he passed by me, he muttered, "Come with me." The second I stepped into the hotel suite, Luke shut the door behind him with a backhand motion. He pinned me against the door, his eyes dark. Am I that embarrassing to be seen with? You like your online husbands, don't you? I have a better body. I blinked. This man holds a grudge. He still remembered something from that long ago. While I was silently complaining, he had already grabbed my hand and pressed it firmly against his well-built chest. His other arm wrapped around my waist, and with a gentle pull, he pressed me into his embrace. Even through his suit jacket, I could clearly feel the fullness of his pectoral muscles. I got so nervous I swallowed hard. I'm a thirsty girl, but one with a lot of nerve and no guts. He chuckled softly. My face flushed. But still, it felt really, really good to touch. My heart was pounding with excitement. Well, in that case. I stood on my tiptoes, grabbed his collar, and kissed him. The hand holding mine paused. The next second, he leaned down and swiftly took control. A warm palm stroked my back as he deepened the kiss. Unable to withstand his assault, I could only cling tightly to his neck. Just as my breathing became a mess, there was a knock on the door. Luke, you punk, what did you lock the door for? Where's my sister-in-law? Luke's sister's voice came through. Startled, I tried to push Luke away, but he didn't stop. Focus, he whispered, his voice husky. The next second, his lips were on mine again. Our hurried breaths mingled in the air for a long time before Luke reluctantly pulled away. My breathing evened out. He lowered his head, pecked me lightly on the lips, and, with a smile in his eyes, took my hand. When we walked to the main table with Luke, a collective gasp went through the crowd. It was so sudden that the buzz of discussion grew louder. Luke scanned the room, and the noise instantly died down. As if to soothe my nerves, he gently squeezed my fingers, then casually picked up his phone. Siri. Yes? Call my wife. Luke had changed my contact name. The moment my phone rang, the room erupted. Oh my God. Diana is actually the boss's wife. Luke looked at me, a smile playing on his lips, growing wider and wider. After the party, Luke suddenly said, "From now on, you're not allowed to look at any of those mindless online husbands. But I'm exhausted after a long day of work. I need to relax, don't I?" I teased. Luke frowned, clearly annoyed. You can look at mine. I can look at the ones on my phone whenever I want. Yours, not so much. You can, he said, his gaze burning. With that, Luke pulled me back into the suite. He ripped off his tie, tossed his jacket aside, and his well-defined fingers began unbuttoning his shirt, one by one. I was completely mesmerized. Is looking enough? Want to try touching? He asked, his voice husky and full of seduction. I stared, dumbstruck, at the chiseled physique before me. Finally, I couldn't resist and slowly reached a hand toward his chest. I touched him tentatively. He flinched, and I looked up, startled. Those familiar eyes were shimmering with a dangerous light. Keep going. I swallowed hard and reached out again. The moment my palm made full contact with his chest, a slow smile spread across Luke's face. Yes, just like that. Luke's Adam's apple bobbed, and he quickly leaned in and kissed me. Our lips and breath intertwined as the kiss grew more intense. In the heat of the moment, he gripped my waist and murmured in my ear, "Wife." Hubby. His body tensed, and the next second, a flurry of kisses fell upon me. Wild and lingering.